Hey everyone, welcome back to Drive On. I'm your host, Scott Deluzio, and today my guest is Shawn Welsh, the founder and co host of the VET SOS podcast. We met recently at the Military Influencer Conference, and I was excited to invite him on the show to discuss all the great things that he's involved in to help out the veteran community and all that great stuff that he's doing. So before we dive into what it is that Shawn is up to and talking about the podcast and everything else, first, Shawn, want to welcome you to the show. Glad to have you here.
Thanks so much, Scott. I mean, I've been looking forward to this. It's going to be a lot of fun. And it's always interesting as a podcaster to go on a podcast too. So it's always interesting to see how different things are done, and you pick some things from other people and add it to your show. And you got a great product here, man. Love being a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've done the same. I've been on the other side of the mic as well, and uh, been a guest, and I love seeing how other people do things. Sometimes it's just, hey, just show up and we'll free flow and we'll, some people are way structured. Some people are, kind of just whatever happens, happens. We'll just take it. But there's always different flows, different processes. And before we started recording here, we're nerding out about technology and all this other stuff. So, it's kind of cool. It's always nice having another podcaster on the show too, because, at least they're familiar with the process and, how things go. So you don't have to, you know, go through too much of the onboarding process to make sure everything runs smoothly. So let's talk about your show. So your podcast focuses on information and resources about veteran support, organizations and the type of resources that are available. Um, uh, what types of things are out there? What do you guys typically discuss on the show that might be able to benefit the listeners?
What we started with, and we continue to do this, is military transition. That is my entire focus. So
Mhm.
everything we do, I have to be able to tie back to military transition somehow. And the whole point of that being that we want to educate the veteran community, the veterans, the service members, and the spouses about all the different benefits, or not only benefits, but benefits, organizations, things like that are out there for them during not only the military transition, but other transitions they may have through life. Because as we know pretty well, first 5 years out of the military, a lot of service members go through multiple jobs, so you're kind of starting over each time, and
Right.
so all these skills you can learn. So we've been doing this for 2.5 years, and we've been able to talk to over 100 different organizations and people working specifically with military transition or some aspect of military transition. And it's just been absolutely amazing for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And like everybody else who has been in the military, at some point that time comes to an end, and you got to transition. So it's one of those things. It's common amongst all of us as we got to reinvent ourselves to some extent. Some people will continue doing the job that they did in the military. They'll find a civilian equivalent job and they'll continue doing that. So maybe it's not as much of a reinvention, but still, you're not wearing that uniform. You don't have that the support of the entire United States military behind you, right? It's a different thing. Even just day to day life. Do you go to the gym and work out, or do you not? No one's going to be breathing down your neck, making sure you do PT every day. So it's one of those things where it's just a lifestyle shift, a culture shift, and you kind of have to figure out where do you fit in this world. Um, and I know you've transitioned out, and you're now helping other veterans and supporting them in that regard. From your own personal experience, could you walk us through maybe some of the challenges that maybe you've had or seen other people face while transitioning, and how they could kind of work to overcome some of those things?
Well, absolutely. I think the biggest thing is that feeling of being overwhelmed
Mhm.
is probably one of the biggest things, especially if you think of somebody who joined at 17 or 18, and maybe they did 20 years. They know nothing outside of the military, essentially, as far as work's concerned. So it can be a daunting transition to go through. And what I encourage people to do is think about the transition as this is your chance to do and be whatever you want to be. This truly is an opportunity that you can decide what you want to do or what you want to be, and take pathways to help you get there. If you've always wanted to be a ballerina dancer, you can go start doing that if you really want to. So it, don't let the pressure of the moment overcome the opportunity that's in front of you. The other problem that we see quite a bit is time. People wait till the last minute, and some of that is because of the units they're in, and
Mhm.
they, unfortunately, don't do right by the service member and cut their time short. Other, maybe it's fear, maybe it's laziness. Who knows? But we're afforded 2 years to transition. So you need to make the most of that. And if you do that early, you can spread everything out so that the impact is less on the unit, and you can still get everything accomplished that you want to do it during your transition. So those are two big ones that I've seen in the recommendations I have for them as it pertains to it.
Yeah, it's funny that the choice of career that you chose to talk about. Usually, people talk about, getting out. It's maybe a doctor, maybe you're going to be a plumber, maybe you're going to be, an accountant or an electrician, or those more typical things. But you chose ballet dancing, so I'd be interested to see if there's any ballet in your future.
You've met me in person. I know you have no doubt that I'm very light on my feet and quite fluid when it comes to dancing. So, um, one thing no one's ever confused me with is a dancer. I promise you that.
Me too. So I think we'll agree to stay away from the ballet arena and let other people handle that, because they're going to be way more graceful than either one of us will be. So no worries, anybody there. No, we're not going to be taking over the ballet world anytime soon or ever.
Ever. Yeah.
um, and so you're also a certified resiliency trainer. Is that correct?
Yeah, through the Army. I was a
Okay.
master resiliency trainer and facilitator while I was in the Army.
Okay.
Loved the program, did a lot of things for me personally, and love still having that skill set that I can just help people with if they need that kind of assistance.
Yeah, have you found yourself being able to kinda tap into some of those skills after getting out of the military?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think the thing people confuse with resiliency is it's not something that it just happens. Like you
Right.
have to work at it. You have to work at those resiliency skills so that you build that muscle memory so it's there when you need it. So think of it as you work on it during the good times so it's there for the bad times. And just going through those skills and understanding how they work and how positive psychology and the negativity bias play into our everyday life, being able to use those skills to combat that and try to move forward is huge. And I think anybody who is going through transition can greatly benefit from having those skills in their back pocket.
Yeah, having those skills, is, to your point, you do have to build those things. It's not like you get resiliency, you build resiliency, right? And so um, you don't go to the gym and get big muscles. You build big muscles by going to the gym, lifting the weights and putting the work in. And it doesn't happen overnight either. It's not like I went to the gym today, I did some curls, and now my biceps are ripped and I'm awesome. Uh, that's something that takes time. If that's where you want to get, you can get there eventually, but you're not going to get there overnight.
Right.
And so, and even if you do quote unquote get there, and you got to that point where now you got these ripped bicep muscles and you're super strong. Okay, well I'm done. I've achieved my goal, and I'm not going to go to the gym anymore. I'm not going to work out. Well, those things are going to start to kind of fade away a little bit,
Right.
right? And I got to imagine resiliency is probably something very similar, right?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It is definitely a skill you can lose if you're not constantly practicing it. And the beauty of like the Army resiliency program was the skills are pretty simple to work through. They don't take a lot of time, and they're things that you can just do in your everyday life to help practice building that resiliency within yourself. So I know, like when I was coming through, a lot of people made fun of master resiliency, and that's why the military's weak and this and that. And okay, You can go that route if you want, but the science and the studies have proven that wrong. And I even had a soldier come through like that because it used to be mandatory for in processing.
Okay.
So a soldier came through and he was all miserable, didn't want to be there for the in processing. And I said, I got it, man, but you have to be here. So you might as well have some fun with it. And we did our 2 day session. And about a year and a half later, I was facilitating a course and he is in the course. And he tells me, he's like, you taught it differently than anybody I'd ever seen do it before. And it really made it impactful for me and meaningful. And so I wanted to do it too. And that meant the world to me
Hmm.
because I love being an instructor. I love being out there and helping people, and being able to make that change in him was just awesome. It was awesome to hear and awesome to see.
Yeah, and you see people who do these presentations sometimes, teach in a class, and it's the death by PowerPoint type thing, and it's a drag. It's brutal, and you're sitting there trying to keep your eyelids open because uh, it's like I can only take so much of this at any one time, right? But if you have someone who actually is passionate about whatever the topic is that you're teaching and actually cares that the people who are in the class get the knowledge and the information as opposed to just check the box, yeah, I taught this, now we can move on and do something else that is more valuable in their mind, right? In this with something like this is valuable uh, stuff to learn. And when you are teaching it, you obviously had a passion, you had an impact on this person, and I'm sure other people as well. Maybe not everybody has come up to you and expressed that in the way that this person did, um, but you at least had an impact on this one person, right? So you clearly are teaching it in a different way than somebody else might, and that engages and captures people, and then they can take it and be and do something useful with that information that was taught to them, and that'll carry them a whole lot further than sitting through an hour long PowerPoint deck that is just tedious and boring. They're just reading off the slides and next, 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 and just trying to get through it, right? So that's a lot better, right? And I'm sure even through your show, you can probably utilize some of the uh, tactics and techniques that you learn through that training in the conversations that you have, right?
Definitely. And I think a lot of the things that I've done in my life play into the podcasting thing. I was a mobile DJ for 10 years before I joined the military, doing weddings and school dances and things like that, and absolutely loved it.
Hmm.
So you get a little bit of the entertainment factor that comes in there. And I have a undergraduate degree in public relations. I've never been scared to talk in front of people. And so getting up in front of people and talking's never bothered me. Have I always been funny? No, but I'm not scared to get up in front of people. And the other thing I learned early on was I can't take myself too seriously,
Mm.
and you know, if you can laugh at yourself, you can relate to so many people. And I remember it actually spawned from when I was DJing. I was in college, and I was given this job to do a little kid beauty show in the mall. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll play. They give me a song list of songs, 10 songs or whatever, and so we're setting up. We're going through the list, and then the lady goes, okay, and then you're going to teach them the Macarena at the end. I'm like, excuse me. Once again, as I stated earlier, I'm not a dancer, especially without copious amounts of adult beverages. And so we have this discussion, and she's like, well, yeah, no, you have to do it with them and show them how to do it. They don't know how to do it. I'm like, in the middle of the mall. The college is like a mile down the road here, and I'm currently in college and whatever else. And so I was like, well, all right, here we go. And it was at that point that I realized that nothing's going to happen to me. Yeah,
Right.
sure, I'll look like a buffoon or whatever. People are going to laugh, but you know what? I still get paid at the end of the day, and I still go home with my pride intact. So it sort of changed the way I looked at a lot of things, and that's really helped me. So you know, it definitely helped getting in front of people. Not
Oh, for
scared to
sure.
do that at all. Never have been. So if you're able to not take yourself so seriously, have some fun with it, but also get involved in things you're passionate about. Which for me, the MRT, the resiliency program, was definitely something I had a lot of passion for. And unfortunately, a lot of people get into teaching different courses, especially in the military, who aren't very good at it. And it's not necessarily any fault of their own. Just some people don't have the personality to do it, and they wind up with that death by PowerPoint. And
Yeah.
so hopefully we can get to a point where we're a little bit more selective in finding the right people to teach certain things, because there's a lot of valuable information out there that gets lost because people can't deliver it in the right way.
Yeah, that's right. And just thinking about the delivery, going back to your experience in that mall with those kids, had you been too self-conscious or, not wanted to get in front of people or worried that your friends might be at the mall because the college is right down the street and, whatever. And you're like, no, I'm not going to get up there and teach these kids how to do this dance. Uh, well, then those kids are going to be out on the dance floor, a song that they're not familiar with, and they're going to be like, okay, what do I do? And it's like, I don't know, maybe they would've just gone out and danced crazy anyways and, like, be a kid, anyways, but they were able to learn something from somebody else, and uh, that was a positive thing that they probably took away something from that, and it may have just been a small thing that they take away, but maybe it's like, "Oh, well, this person doesn't mind getting out on the dance floor and
Yeah.
moving around kind of all silly and, being crazy. But, um, I guess that's okay for me to do too. And, maybe one or two of those kids has taken that away with them, and carried that through their life. And they may not even realize it, but that's just like an okay thing for them to do now. Right.
That'd be
So,
wonderful.
yeah, that would be right. Um, but to your point, there's some people who just don't have that. They don't have that in their DNA or whatever. They're not the type of person who is going to be energetic and get out there and uh, show people how to do things and even instruct things in a way that people are going to listen to and receive. Bring it back to the military. I think we've all sat in those death by PowerPoint classes that it's like you just want to gouge your eyeballs out because it's like this is awful. Um,
It's always
but
a debate between the eyeballs or the eardrums.
yeah, I mean, or both. I mean, you just flip a coin, maybe. I don't know, um, but there's a lot of organizations out there that kind of maybe take this back to the type of work that I think you and I are both trying to
Mhm.
accomplish here is get folks in front of the right organizations, and I think the same concept applies to some of these organizations. I think everybody who is doing it, trying to help out veterans, they're all doing it with coming from a good place in their heart. I think, yeah, sure, there's going to be a couple bad apples out there, right? But um, I think for the most part, most people are out there and they genuinely want to help. Now, some of them are going to be able to help really well, and some of them not so much. And there's a kind of a fine balancing act where it's like, okay, I'm in that stage where I need to get help with something, whatever that something is, maybe my mental health or whatever. And I need to figure out now, I got to figure out who is the person who's going to be able to help me, or the organization that's going to be able to help me. A lot of times when you're in that mode where the world is crumbling down all around you, trying to figure that out at that moment, not an easy task. But you've talked to plenty of organizations, I'm sure, that have been able to be useful and beneficial to folks. Um, is there any kind of tips or advice or strategies or anything that you might have to offer to folks that might help them if they're in that state where it's like I don't know where to turn right now and they're not thinking clearly, all that kind of stuff.
Well, we try to vet every person and organization that comes on the show, because we want to make sure that we're putting forward legitimate organizations. Because unfortunately, there are some that are have less than desirable um, wants, I guess. I don't
Sure.
know the right wording here, but then you also have like the VA sharks and that kind of stuff out there. So trying to tread those waters and make sure that we don't bring on somebody inadvertently who's taking advantage of service members. Definitely don't want that to happen.
Right.
So that's one thing we try very hard to do on the show. and make sure that first we're doing that. The second thing is I tell everybody that asks me the question similar to that is ask people who have gone through programs and then get more than one recommendation. Because you and I may have done the same program. I may have loved it. You may have hated it.
Right.
So don't just take my word for it because it worked for me. Talk to a couple of people, get their opinions, see what they liked, what they didn't like, and then feel out if you think it's best for you. Um, One of my favorite analogies was given to me by Alfredo Torres when he said that transitions like a buffet. You go up to the buffet line, you pick and choose the things you want, and you go back down and sit down. And that's exactly what it is. There's over 47,000 organizations out there right now with veteran in the name somewhere or in their mission statement. And a lot of them are doing great work. There's a lot of redundancy, so trying to find that one that is perfect for you. It could be a local level one, it could be a state level one, it could be a national organization, and that's really what we're trying to do is provide that information so that they can make an educated guess for themselves
Yeah.
or an educated decision, not a guess. But listen to the stories, listen to what the organization does, and say, you know what, I relate to that. I want to do that, or that doesn't sound like me. I'm going to move on to the next one, and that's hopefully what we're able to achieve as we continue to talk to these organizations.
Yeah, and to your point earlier where you said where I forget which way it went, like, you may have loved this organization and I may have hated it or vice versa, I forget which way we went with it, but, the thing that you loved about that organization, to your point of getting multiple references from it, the thing that you loved, somebody else might be like, well, that's not so big of a deal." And the thing that I hated, they might be like, "Oh, that I definitely would have hated that too." And so they might steer away from that organization. Or, the opposite could be true, where the thing that you love, they're like, "Okay, yeah, that's actually really cool." And the thing that I hated, they're like, "Well, that's not a big deal to me, and it doesn't bother me." So, maybe this will be a great organization for me. And so, yeah, getting multiple sources of information, I think is great. And I'm
There's
sure. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say there's another point to consider. David Trenholm had come on the show, and he brought up the point that 75% of the organizations do the same thing.
Yeah.
There's talk about resumes, interview skills, what have you. It's that other 25% that makes them special. So figuring out what that secret sauce is, and if that's what you want.
Mhm.
And granted, everybody approaches resumes different and what have you, but you know, for the most part, a lot of these major programs have the same types of things that they discuss: resumes, interview techniques, dress code, and finances, and whatever else. So it's digging a little bit deeper, doing a little bit of research, and getting to what you really want.
Yeah, and, uh, yeah, again, everybody's tastes are gonna be a little bit different, with that type of stuff. So, sure, you might have, uh, most of the services that, several organizations provide, they might all be the same, but maybe there's one with a little flair that does something a little bit differently, and you get uh, that kinda personalized service or whatever it is that they do differently that makes them a little bit more palatable to you. um, maybe some other organization does something different, and you may not like that as well. So, so I think there's a lot of considerations out there with all the different organizations. Obviously transition based, you're focused a lot on careers, resumes, education, those types of things. Then you go into a whole other world when you're talking about, other issues that people may have in terms of finances and mental health, physical health issues, after getting out of the service. There's a whole world of organizations out there for those types of things as well. And it's, I mean, there's a lot. You mentioned there's like what 47,000 with like veteran in their either in their name or in their mission statement or something. So like there's a lot of organizations out there, and you're right. How do you vet all of them? Probably the best way is to talk to somebody who actually used them, right?
I think that that's a great starting point, anyway. And I may have the wrong approach. I don't know, but like I'm real cautious when it starts coming down to anybody dealing with medical or counseling, mental, anything like that. Um, unless I see legitimate schooling or certifications, or
Mhm.
at least ones that I consider, I tend to stay away from it.
Okay.
That's just me, and part of that is my own ignorance that I may not know what they do and how they do it. And I'm not saying that it doesn't work for people, but for me, like when it comes to that side of the house, I like to see the credentials, the
Sure.
and that way I can say, hey, yeah, we vetted this guy to the point that he has a doctor, he's a doctor, or he's been certified in this type of counseling or whatever, to add that layer, to what we're doing. So,
Sure.
I'm not saying it's necessarily the right approach, but that's just sort of the way we've attacked it. And so far, we've been comfortable. And the people we've had to come on to talk about things like PTSD and things like that have been absolute rock stars. Just
Yeah.
just amazing.
Yeah, and to your point, there's your earlier point that there are different approaches and different ways of doing things, and one thing's going to be right for one person, one thing's going to be right for another person, and um, they're not all going to be the same, but it doesn't mean that any of them are wrong. And so, your approach is what your approach is, and I don't think it's wrong. I just think it's your approach. If that's the way you go after this, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I kind of go a little more on the other side where I do incorporate a lot of those types of folks on the show. And for me, my approach is mostly because I want to provide options to people. I don't know what's gonna be right for you or for the next guy or somebody else. I don't know what's gonna be right, but if you don't know what's out there, then it's gonna be harder for you to figure out
Yeah,
what it is. And if you get to hear from the person, if they sound like a total idiot, like, then okay, well, that's not gonna be the right person for me. But if they sound like they really know what they're doing, they're really squared away, and everything is that they're saying is, kind of in line with what you're looking for, then go give it a try.
yeah,
Worst thing you could do is give it a try and find out that it's not helping, and you check that off your list and move on to something else.
yeah,
That's my approach, and other people might think that my approach is wrong and that it's not a great way to look at things. It's like, okay, well then clearly I'm not for you, and but then there's people like you, and maybe you're more their speed, and that's what they're looking for,
yeah,
and so I think at the end of the day, people like you, me, there's a bunch of other folks out there who have similar shows where we're trying to highlight resources that are available to folks. Um, at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do is get that information out there to help people. And whether they get the information from you, they get the information from me, they get the information from somebody else, I really don't care. To be perfectly honest, I've said this to other people before. I would prefer it if nobody listened to my show. If I didn't have to have a show, if everybody just got the information that they needed, they got the help, the services and support, and everything was great. Veteran suicides went down to zero, and like all that. I would be so much happier if I didn't even have to do it.
oh
Um,
yeah,
but I'm sure most people who are in our shoes would probably agree with that. Not to say I don't enjoy what I do as far as podcasting, getting to talk with folks like you, but the have to versus the want to do this, and
no.
I at this point I feel like I kind of have to.
Yeah, and there's over 47,000 organizations. There's over 200,000 people that transition every year. There's plenty of people and
Yeah,
organizations out there because there's no way one show could cover all 47,000 organizations,
right.
So it's like, I love the fact that we have so many people in this field. And at least from my experience so far, everybody likes to work together, which is awesome.
Yeah,
Nobody seems to be trying to step on somebody or put somebody else down. And that's beautiful because it is all about trying to help the others.
yeah, exactly. And my experience has been very similar. I don't think there's not been another veteran podcaster that I've had on my show who was like, "No, I'm not gonna share anything," or, "I'm not gonna try to promote your show or, help you out," or anything like that. Like, everybody has been pretty cool with everything, and, uh, likewise, like, if I'm on somebody else's show, I'm gonna promote it. I'm gonna try to get my listeners to go and listen to their show too, because, maybe they stumble across me, but maybe I'm not quite right for them, and go someplace else. I'm okay with that. Like, most people who have shows, they don't do stuff like that. But I think in this kind of community, when we're trying to help folks out, it's like go to where the help is. It's just like when people start seeing a doctor or a therapist or something like that, and it's like, I'm not really clicking with this person. Oh, okay, well, go find somebody else. Like, there's plenty of them out there. You can find somebody, right?
We've forgotten that simple fact that you can change the channel, you can change something. You don't have to protest. You don't have to, cancel somebody. You can just move on. It's allowed.
It is. Yeah. It is, absolutely. And the greatest way to, I don't know, call it protest or cancel or whatever people are calling it these days, is just not to support the person with financially. If you're going to a doctor and you don't like that doctor, well, stop going to the doctor. And if enough people don't like that doctor, well, eventually that doctor's not going to have any patients. They're going to go out of business. So, it's or they're going to get fired from wherever they're working. But um, you know that's how you do it.
Yeah.
You don't need signs in the parking lot and social media posts that are all nasty and everything. Just stop going, and enough people stop going, then they'll figure it out. I mean, when the the bank account starts getting lower and lower, they'll figure it out. uh,
That is an indicator.
yeah, absolutely. Um, so transitioning, we talked a bunch about that, right? And um, that's one thing where what am I going to do with my life after getting out of the military and all that stuff. But once when you've gotten out, maybe you went back to school, maybe you've gotten a new job, that type of thing. um Kind of settling into life is kind of a different issue. Trying to adjust to civilian life. I'm sure you've seen plenty of people who've had some issues with just dealing with civilians. I think that's a very common issue that folks are having. What's your experience with that, and what any advice maybe that you might have for folks?
Well, anybody who's seen me here in the last year or so knows that my waistline is fully accepted, not being in the military anymore, which is something I'm working on to get it back down so I can stay healthy and happy. But um, it is a transition, because that we've all met people, and I used to joke when I was in the service that you had the army people, and then you had the stripes people. Like I was like Bill Murray in Stripes more than I was anything else. But the army needs army people too. Those people
Mhm.
that are 100% army, live and breathe it. Because the army needs that. But then they also need some people to tell the emperor they're not wearing any clothes. And now granted, not as popular normally as the army people, but still unnecessary evil in my opinion. Um, but that transition out, we tell people don't lose the skills and the things you learned in the service, the discipline, being on time, the clear and concise communication, things like that are huge. And you bring a lot to the table when you go to a civilian employer. But at the same time, find ways to find a new tribe. That could be church, social groups, could be veteran groups, could be your local VFW, whatever the case may be. You're going to lose that sense of belonging when you leave the service. So you got to find a new one.
Mhm.
So find something you can get involved with and be a part of. Don't isolate, and take the time, try different things. Know that joining a company or joining an organization is not a life sentence. You're not signing a contract for the next 20 years.
Right.
You could go to an organization and it could run its course for you and it's time to move on to the next one. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think as service members, we have that part of the mentality is hard to get past because you sign your enlistment, you're stuck for 4 years or 6 years or whatever the case may be, or you have a commission and you could always resign your commission after a certain period. So we have those types of thoughts and mentality that we go through. It's not the same when it comes to the civilian world. So understand that if you're not happy or something's not giving you what you need, like we were just talking about changing the channel, move on to something else and find ways that you can be happy, whether that's hobbies, spending more time with family. Because a lot of people like me, after you do 20 years, you want to pay back the family because you know how much you took from them. And I have a lot of buddies in that same boat where, it becomes more about family after the military.
Mhm.
And there's nothing wrong with that either, because the family sacrifices a lot, especially, depending on what the job is. So being able to find those balances and find those things that work for you so that you can keep your sanity and you can just grow into your community, those are huge. So it's all really keeping the skills you learn, but changing the mindset a little bit.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point about the variety of organizations or hobbies or companies that you can go work for, things that you can do outside of the military. It's not like you're enlisting and I'm enlisting as an infantryman or something, and like that's what I'm going to be for the next 6 years, and
Right?
that's I'm kind of stuck in that position for that period of time. And maybe you can reclass and switch your MOS and go to something else, but most people they pretty much stick with what they started with, and that's that, right? But you get out, there's a whole world of possibilities. You could try one thing, you go to one company and work there for a little bit and realize maybe that's not for you and that's not the career path that you want. And yeah, you can change the channel and move to something else. Um, you can have hobbies. You might have some free time depending on what it is that you do for a career, right? And so you might be able to rekindle some of that passion that you might have had for a different hobby that maybe you had before joining the military.
Yeah.
Maybe you like to golf a lot and you just didn't have time to golf while you're in the military, or you're stationed someplace where there wasn't easy access to golf courses or that type of thing. Well, pick up the clubs and dust them off and go do it again, and see if you still got that swing, and see if you lost
That'll
that.
add a whole new level of frustration to your life right
I
there.
I know, right? And you'll throw so much money down the drain, or maybe in the woods as you're losing balls and all that kind of stuff. But you'll be a- you'll be able to have the benefit. You get outside, you get it out into nature, and maybe if you're golfing with some friends, you get that camaraderie, that type of thing. Whereas if you just say like, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. Like that's not part of my life anymore. Well, then you miss out on all that stuff. So there's a whole world of opportunities out there that you can go down those rabbit holes and try different things. And again, if you don't like it, you realize, you know what, I used to like this thing, but now not so much. Okay, well, try something else. It's not that big of a deal to make that switch, going forward, right?
And it can be something little. Like we have a pool at the house. I enjoy getting in the pool after a day of work and
Mhm.
just sitting there floating and playing with the dogs and talking with my wife. And I mean, it's just it's very simple. It's not like I'm out there swimming laps. I'm just floating like on an inner tube or something, and just chilling.
Right.
But it helps me with that sanity piece. And so it doesn't have to be anything complex.
Right, and to your point, that was a very small thing. It's literally just getting in a pool and, enjoying yourself, just relaxing and being able to let your guard down, just relax and breathe and have a little peace and
Yep.
sanity. And so without that, then maybe your mind starts racing and you start having all these other, things going on, and maybe that's not where you want to be. And so, you found that little thing, and wonderful. That's the thing that works for you. Somebody else, I don't know, maybe someone's listening in Alaska, and the pool doesn't sound like such a great idea this time of year. Um,
I know
but
some of those sick people that like to run.
yeah, I mean, and maybe you are one of those people, and running is your thing, and you like to torture yourself. And hey, you know what, that's fine. Nobody's judging you. Supposedly it's healthy, and that's fine. um but I think the key point here is, with all of this stuff that we've talked about, I think the overarching theme here is find the thing that works for you. And the thing that works for you may not be the thing that worked for your buddy, because your buddy they're built differently. They had a different background, different uh, upbringing, and different likes and interests in things like that. So what worked for that one person may not work for you. Yeah, sure. Ask them for advice if they've already been through that, and see if it might be the right fit for you. But it may not be, and be open to the fact that, hey, they went down that path, and that may not be the path I really want to go down. Even if it worked out great and that person's completely successful, it may not be the same definition of success for you, and so you might have to go down a different path, and that's okay, right? Um, and
100%.
and and I think that's kind of the theme here of this conversation is being okay with trying different things and pivoting, right?
Well, absolutely. And the thing is, most veterans have a servant's heart. They want to get involved, they want to give back, they want to do things, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the one thing that we often fail to do is take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
All right. And one of the best programs I went through, and I talk about it all the time, is the Leader Transition Institute from We to Me. Is their flagship program. And that program helps you focus on you and what you need to be doing and things like that. And so don't be scared to take some time for you when you get out of the military. Now, I'd love the fact that people want to volunteer and give back and do things, and hopefully they continue to want to do that. But you can't help anybody if you're not right.
That's right.
So take that time to make sure that, you're right. And maybe it's taking a break during stuff, so like I'm planning on taking a break, from certain things so that I can focus more on myself and my family. But it's because I feel it's time to do that.
Mhm.
So, make sure you take care of yourself in this whole process.
Yeah, it goes back to that concept of when you're on an airplane and they tell you to put your oxygen mask on first before helping other people. It's not that you got to pick which kid that you like best before you start helping them, right? It's not that. It's that if you're helping them and they're struggling and they're fighting you or whatever because they're scared, and who wouldn't be when the oxygen masks start falling out of the sky, and that's a scary thing for anybody, right? But if you're helping them and uh, you end up passing out, well, you're not going to be very much help to them going forward, right? Or if you have multiple kids that you got to help out with, um, so you got to take care of yourself so that you can take care of them, and that I think that goes for everything in life. If you get unhealthy, if you're sick all the time, or you hurt yourself, you got an injury, and you can't do the things that you usually do. Um, People might be relying on you to do those things. Maybe you have an elderly family member that you're helping out, or even kids that you're helping out. And if you can't do the things that you usually do, well, those people might be counting on you. So you got to take care of yourself physically, mentally, your overall well being. You got to take care of all of that stuff so that you can be there and be present for those folks. And it's just like when we were in the military, right? Um, the if you're not taking care of yourself physically, mentally, all that kind of stuff, you're not going to be the best soldier that you could be. Um, you're not going to be all that you can be. Is that their their thing? But you're really not. And that was your job. People were relying on you to be the best that you can be. So you had to put in that effort and make yourself um, the best that you could be so that you can show up for those other folks, right? So, um, I know we've been kind of going on about transition issues and talking about the podcast and everything. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the audience before we wrap up here?
Well, there's two things. One, love what you're doing here, and hopefully, some of your audience will check us out.
Mhm.
Because we have the transition show. We also now have an educational spotlight and a um, entrepreneurial spotlight. To help people learn more about being an entrepreneur and learn about the veteran programs that are on campuses and that are out there to help you with attending school. So just looking at other ways we can help in the transition space. And so we'd love for people to check out those different tools and let us know what you think. Because obviously we're doing it for you guys, and we want to make sure that the product is what you need and what you want.
Mhm.
Um, the one thing that we're taught in the military is when you don't know, you ask. You go higher, you ask your superiors, whatever, you get the direction you need. John Maxwell has a quote where he stated, don't ever ask for directions from someone who's never been there. And this is one of those cases when it comes to transition. 99% of people only transition once. There's only a small handful that get out and then get back in and whatever else. Most of us don't do transition more than once. So, as like when I was a first sergeant, if you would have come to me and asked me about transition, I would have given you're going to go to TAP and go to the USO. I don't know. I mean, because I don't know. And the
Right.
fact is, your chain of command most likely doesn't know. But the good thing is, outside of the military, we have tons of organizations that want to help. And we have organizations like your podcast and my podcast that are trying to provide that education. So, as much as I respect the chain of command and it's there for a reason and it has a mission, this is one of those where it's probably not as valuable as, us old retired people that are sitting out here, wanting to help. So, just make sure that whatever pathway you're choosing in life, that you are seeking out mentors that have been to where you're trying to go, not asking people who've never been there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because if you haven't been there, yeah, you could speak in theory and, theoretically, yeah, sure, go to TAPS and TAPS should teach you everything that you need. And yeah, sure, they give you a lot of information, but sometimes it's like drinking from a fire hose and you're not going to get it all. So yeah, talk to those folks who've been there, especially when you're talking about career transition, because transitioning to one career field versus another, there may be certain things that you might want to do that you might not need to do for other careers, and so maybe there's additional training or certifications or going back to college or things like that for one particular career, whereas another one you might not need that, and so there's different things that you might need to do. So ask the people who are already in that field,
Yeah.
maybe who have transitioned. I think a great resource for that is LinkedIn, where you can search for folks who are in a certain industry, uh, work, working at maybe certain companies that you might be interested in, and you can look for folks who have U.S. Army in their profile, or Marine Corps or Navy or whatever. You can look for all those types of things on LinkedIn. Reach out to some of those folks. Maybe they'll respond, maybe they won't, but reach out and say, hey, how did you get to where you are? That's where I want to be in 5 years. How do you do that? So, I think that's great advice. Follow those folks. Ask for those folks to be mentors, maybe, or even just asking general advice. And but talk to those people who have actually been through it. So that's good advice there. So, Shawn, again, I really want to thank you for taking the time to come on the show, sharing your insights, your background, your resources that you had available with us. Because again, this is just another one of those resources that maybe people just don't know about. Maybe they don't know about your podcast, and if they don't, I certainly encourage people to go uh, stop what they're doing right now and go subscribe to the to the Vet SOS podcast, because again, it's just another great resource, and maybe it's going to have the information that you need. So definitely check it out. I will have the link to the podcast in the show notes, so anyone who is interested in it, want to find out a little bit more about transition type resources and that type of thing, super awesome show. Definitely go check it out. So again, link will be in the show notes. And Shawn, thank you again for taking the time to come on.
Thank you so much for having me, man. This has been a blast.
Awesome. Thanks.